MMA is quite a brutal sport, and every once in a while, you're bound to see some gory injuries filled with blood and broken bone. Today, we're going to be looking at the worst UFC injuries that will disgust you. This first one is hard to watch. The eye poke of Belal Muhammad. In the octagon, eye pokes are common, but they usually aren't serious enough to end a fight. Muhammad accepted the challenge of fighting British great Leon Edwards in March, knowing it would be the biggest fight of his career up to that point. Edwards accidentally poked Muhammad in the eye, and the doctor stopped the match since Muhammad was the underdog and he clearly couldn't proceed. Images and recordings of the event revealed later how horrible it was, and believe me when I say I was literally gagging. It was so bad that the American had blood loss in one eye and needed sutures. If anyone's accidentally poked you in the eye, you'd know how terribly it hurts. I can only imagine how Belal managed it. Up next is one that teaches us never to let our guard down. It was Mark Hominick's second face. Mark Hominick, while entering the cage against Jose Aldo at UFC 129, likely knew he was facing a difficult battle against a deadly striker. And when you're facing an opponent of Aldo's caliber, it is important to be on your toes at all times. Unfortunately, Mark made one tiny mistake that messed it all up. After Hominick dropped his guard for a second during the fight, Jose Aldo pounced and landed multiple punches to the face. If you've seen that match, you know how he ended up severely injuring Hominick's left eye and leaving a hematoma behind. Commentator Joe Rogan even used the phrase second head to describe how bloated the man's face had become. But here's the kicker. Mark was stunned when the fight doctor gave Hominick the green light to continue. And even with that huge swollen face, Mark ended up defeating Aldo. And if you thought this was crazy, wait till you see the next one. These broken legs were truly disgusting. 3 recent shattered legs have been terrible for UFC fighters. Anderson Silva comes in first, followed by Chris Weidman and then Conor McGregor. We have never seen something like Anderson Silva's fractured leg. Ironically, in their rematch for the 185-pound belt, Silva faced Chris Weidman, who blocked an inside left kick from Silva. After Silva's leg curled around Weidman's, the latter's leg snapped in two. Herb Dean quickly ended the battle when he saw his opponent was in apparent pain. After a year of inactivity, Silva was never the same. Surprisingly, 8 years later, Chris Weidman had the same fate. In a rematch with Uriah Hall from 2010, Weidman fractured Hall's leg with the first punch he delivered. When Hall blocked the strike, we witnessed one of the most painful injuries. And then comes Conor McGregor's broken shin at UFC 264. The Irishman's trilogy matches with Dustin Poirier were overshadowed by an injury. There were other kicks that may have broken McGregor's shin, but pinpointing exactly when the bone was broken is impossible. Anyway, while these may be painful, this next one was hard to watch for all the men out there. Do you remember when Matt Hughes got kicked in the groin? It is not uncommon for a fighter in a UFC match to take a knee to the crotch unintentionally, but in usual cases, the victim is given time to recuperate and then the match resumes as usual. However, that's not what happened with Matt Hughes. To begin, the referee missed what happened, and then as he attempted to notify the referee, his opponent threw blows at him. Very quickly, Matt was on the floor and about to be choked. But then, in a strange turn of events, Hughes' opponent lost grip of the victim, was picked up, dragged across the octagon, and smashed on his back. Now, wasn't this one of the greatest comebacks in the history of the game? The man did not just recover from a painful groin kick, but he also ended up winning the match. Now, this next one is not for the faint of heart. Beware, if you're squeamish about blood, you might want to close your eyes. Leslie Smith's earburst was truly disgusting. This happened during UFC 198 amongst female MMA competitors, and things got pretty ugly in the octagon. In the first round, neither boxer was able to establish dominance over the other, but suddenly, just 90 seconds into the second round, the tide turned. Leslie had been keeping a fighting position nonchalantly, her hands rotating continuously to find the best area to land a flurry of punches on Jessica, when Jessica suddenly swung a tremendous right hook at her ear, causing a gout of blood to come out. A gaping gash opened up and the bleeding never stopped. Since the fight was clearly going Jessica Ai's way, referee Herb Dean stopped it. It was pretty disgusting to watch. Like, I literally couldn't get the the image out of my mind for a good couple of weeks. And sure, her ear recovered in no time, but it was still pretty gruesome. The next injury that I'll talk about is one of which the fighter never really recovered. Yup, I'm talking about the Michael Bisping eye injury. Though Belfort finished Bisping out with a TKO in the second round, it didn't appear like one of the worst injuries in UFC history. However, Bisping suffered a detached retina in his right eye because of the head kick. Dana White declared Bisping's career finished, yet merely 3 months later, on April 27, 2013, Bisping was approved for another fight. This fueled the flames and led to Bisping's ultimate loss of sight in his right eye. Despite losing his sight in one eye, Michael Bisping went on to become the UFC middleweight champion. His left eye was injured again during a fight with Kelvin Gastelum in 2017, prompting him to retire from MMA. After retirement, he went on to pursue a career as a commentator and podcast host for the UFC. While he only suffered a blow to his vision, there was this one fighter who ended up with both a horrible black eye and broken bone, Matt Mitrione. One of the worst injuries in UFC history occurred during the fight involving Travis Browne and Matt Mitrione at UFC Night 81. A heavyweight in the top 10 at the time, Browne proved his value. Until the third round, when Browne dodged a furious blow across Mitrione's right eye, causing acute swelling. Mitrione restrained Browne brilliantly and kept his position. Eventually, Mitrione was temporarily blind in his right eye from Browne's repeated vicious punches to the same place. The scene was revolting and horrifying. Mitrione also had a dislocated shoulder, causing his ribs and shoulder blade to show almost through his skin. And then, as expected, Browne ultimately won. And if you weren't grossed out already, take a look at this next one with a dislocated toe. Poor Jon Jones. In the main event of UFC 159, Jon Jones fought Chael Sonnen for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. After being a big favorite to win the fight, Jones knocked out his opponent with less than 30 seconds remaining in the first round. Jon Jones would dislocate his left big toe while celebrating after yet another successful championship defense. Somehow, despite obviously being in discomfort, Jon Jones managed to finish his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said, "You are a true champion for even attempting to make this work while you deal with one of the nastiest foot injuries I've ever seen." With that said, these were the most horrific injuries that will disgust you in the UFC.
Oh, nice. He checked it. No. He hurt himself. He hurt his leg. Champion. It's the sport's best.
Stop.
Oh,
Stop.
Another pull.
Stop.
Oh, it was
Oh!